Hey everyone, welcome back to another stock thesis I have for you today. And today it's actually going to be a company that I didn't really realize was out there. And that probably means that a lot of you probably didn't realize it was out there. But that's going to be the ticker TYL or Tyler Technologies. So what I'm going looking at here for Tyler Technologies is essentially this is a company that has been a bit better this year. It hasn't been hit that hard overall. It's been hit about down 7% from its peak, down 7% from where the year started, but considerably more from its peak. So really, I did want to take a look at this company because it is a relatively good compounding machine. If I just steal something from Joseph Carlson, so let's take a look at what the core business is. They do one thing and they do one thing well, which is going to be government services. And this is essentially making technology and software as a service for the government. That's whether that's in public administration, for the courts, for appraisal and tax and other civic services. They do it all. They are by far the biggest company in this field. There are a couple competitors. I will touch on them later when we get to the headwinds, but the competitors are about half the size, and it's not really that big of they're not really they're not set as well as Tyler Technologies is within different government areas. So I'm going to talk a bit more about this government revenue. A lot of it is recurring revenue, and and that's something that everyone always likes when you grab revenue from one company. You want it to be recurring, that because we know that that's going to keep coming over year after year after year. And this recurring revenue is also super sticky. It's they have an over 98% retention rate, which when it comes to like the government, you do understand why that would happen. The government is notoriously slow at changing things that they're doing, and even when they do change, there is always going to be some government bloat in there as well. And Tyler Technologies kind of captures on that to be able to give us this recurring revenue of say 85% of the revenue being recurring and 98% of their subscribers are retained every single year. One way we can actually think of Tyler Technologies is it's essentially CRM for the government. It's like if you had Salesforce for essentially all the other companies, public companies, and for government because they have more niche requirements, you do require a specific company to be able to do all of these things in there. The legal quandaries and all of the tax implications, that's going to be something that the government isn't going to be able to do by themselves. So Tyler Technology says, hey, hand it over to us. You pay us some money and we'll build it out for you. And yeah, they're essentially just client resource management specialized for the public sector or for the government sector and not uh, public companies. So let's get to the tailwinds. So they really have three tailwinds that I do want to talk about. They are shifting over to the cloud as they are doing software as a service, and that's going to be increasing the margins. And as we'll see, this could actually entail a lot of revenue for them, or not revenue, but a lot of earnings because of an increase in margins. They do have sticky subscriptions, right? The government, once they actually get someone, they're not taking them off, at least for a long term. The government doesn't sign 1 or 2 year contracts. They'll sign 5, 10 year contracts and then get overrun and then go to 10 to 20 years. Sorry, just took the jab at the government there, but I mean, that's how it always is. The online government services, that's always also something as the government tries to get modernized. We don't expect DMVs to be, you have to walk in. We want to be able to do DMV stuff online or at the courts. We want to be able to do some stuff online, tax filing, all of this stuff, right? We do want more of it online, more at our fingertips. Once again, that bull market for convenience coming in here that Tyler Technologies is able to provide for the government. So, a bit more about the cloud. Shifting to cloud is going to be able to increase their margins. If we look at their current margins, it's at around 14%, slightly under. But if we look at the other CRM companies out there, right, the other public ones that we can see, you really see Salesforce at right now currently at about a 17% margin. Nice is another one that's a smaller CRM company that I've have my eye on. Might do an episode on Nice, but they are another essentially customer resource management company that have done the cloud migration, and they now currently sit at about a 19. net margin. So they have essentially Tyler Technologies have a ability to essentially increase their margins by at least another 200, 300 basis points. And that's a lot when it comes to this, how much revenue they are making. Essentially, stretching the cloud also allows them to sell security, maybe increasing that revenue price point a little bit. Not really the most impactful there, but it also makes it so that it's easier to scale up or down anything that the government may or may not need. Overall, I do think the impact, it is a relatively medium impact, but especially for a company like this, any type of tailwind or headwind is amazing simply because that's always going to be any sort of tailwind is going to be amazing because it's so sticky and it's so hard to get rid of these tailwinds once they go into motion. Sticky subscriptions, right? Revenue becomes easily predicted. The revenue then also never goes down. Essentially, even in downturns, even in the worst markets, right? The government is always going to have money to pay Tyler Technologies. The government literally prints the money that they need to give them. So you're not ever really concerned about them losing revenue over a year. Yes, they have had stagnant years, right? For example, in 2020, they did have a year of essentially stagnant revenues, but then that quickly picked back up. Why? Because the government needs its services, and if the government needs a service, the government pays for the service. So essentially, this is really good tailwind for the company, and I think this is really high impact for them. This because of the amount of stickiness these subscriptions, it is quite reasonable to think that Tyler Technologies, because of the increased essentially uh, predictability, does deserve a higher multiple than another company that is growing at the same rate but is less predictable. So online government services, this is the last thing that I'm going to put there. I do think that the tailwind for this is really just low to medium, more so to the low side, simply because as more governments do convert to online areas, that's kind of expected. That's part of the technology and what they're selling to the customer. So that's not really a tailwind because that's kind of like saying, hey, a tailwind for me selling Coca-Cola is that people are asking me to sell them Coca-Cola. Yes, there's a market for it, but that's not really a tailwind, not really a massive tailwind. So headwinds. I, like I said before, I'm gonna get into the competition that they have, but the other two are possibly risks that we might need to consider. It's not really something I think is super important, but they are something to consider. Competition-wise, there are competition in some of the niches. So in public safety, you have Central Square, and in finance, you have OpenGov. These two are much smaller. Central Square is at max about half the size of Tyler Technology, and OpenGov is just starting. So they're not really competing with at the same scale as Tyler Technologies. They have a relatively low number of competitors, so that's always great. And it's not really the easiest industry to get into, providing the government for services, like providing government for software services, because of all the restrictions and the bureaucracy that it takes to actually get approved for something like this. So that's why I think the overall impact of competition is really low. Next up, budget concerns. This is something that maybe is a bit higher on the concern list, but I still don't think it's that crazy to think about. Simply because, yes, we will have budget overruns. The government will have budget overruns, and that's always going to happen. You may have some funding cuts due to the bad economy that might be coming up, but I don't see that happening, especially as a software as a service company. Providing that software to the government, it's hard to really cut a service, right? You can't really say cut internet to your home, and you're always going to be paying that. And that's the same thing for Tire Technologies. If the government cuts off their service, they're essentially locking off one of their arms and handicapping themselves from doing the things that they are asked to do by the public. And one of the other things with the budget concerns I have slapped in here is complexity to get everything digitized. Because the government has a lot of actual paper documents, getting that digitalized does cause budget concerns. And and this is going to bleed into the next slide, where we talk about how integration risks are in there. Because as costs rise, the government becomes less and less wanting to integrate with people, less and less wanting to do more with title technologies. And one of the things that Tyler Technologies does is upsell the government on its own products. So if an integration goes really well, then the government like, yes, we want to have you along and integrate more things. If it goes poorly, then they might not want to have Tyler Technologies along, which is going to lose them revenue. Obviously, here is the last point, which is long-term projects don't always beget long-term projects. I think that's the biggest integration risk we have there for Tyler Technologies. And one of the other things with integration is they do have a lot of companies or a lot of products to integrate because they have religiously bought up other smaller companies to provide products to the government. Overall, though, once again, this is something where it's like, hey, we have a concern here. The headwinds are more so part of the territory that comes when you're doing this type of technology and doing this type of service. So it's not really something I see as significant headwinds. So what is my overall thesis? I really don't think the headwinds are mission critical at all, because a lot of it does come with the business model. The they should have really high revenue resilience, especially in times of down, and especially in downturns. Especially in downturns, this is probably going to be one of the first companies I look to actually put my money in, simply because their revenue is not going to be going down. They are going to have steady revenue, and as the market declines, the price is going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. They have a great potential to increase margins, so this is definitely something I do want to look at, and I do think that that margin increase is going to be great for any shareholders. The issue that is slightly concerning is the stock-based compensation. Their share count has actually increased by 33% over the last 13 years, partially and actually mainly due to acquisitions. And I'm not really faulting the company for doing that because their share price has been at a very high point, like probably a bit overvalued if I'm going to be honest recently. And they've been using that to essentially buy out other products. And I can't fault a company for saying, hey, we think our company is overvalued, but we can use these shares, then this overvalued shares, to buy a company for essentially cheaper. So what is the overall price, I think, for them? Well, I think that from a revenue perspective, they're not really they're really relatively expensive, right? But I do give them a bit of grace here simply because like I said, they are really sticky with their revenue and earnings growth. So it does make sense for them to actually be priced a bit higher than expected. The free cash flow does get us to about $700. Overall, I think $600 is not a terrible price point for intrinsic value for the company. I do believe that there are people. I do believe that. How do I put it? Essentially, the company is more predictable than most, which means that it should require a higher PE ratio. And right now, its PE its PE is relatively low compared to its 2 or 3 year average, and its free cash flow yield is actually at the highest point it's ever been. So those three factors do mean that it has some room to grow, especially because this year it has decreased in price, whereas its revenue and earnings have both grown. That being said, I don't think it's a buy for me just yet, but it's definitely a company I am strongly keeping an eye on to make sure if there is a good opportunity to buy in, this is a company that I definitely want to hold on to and try and just make money off of simply because its fundamentals are so flipping good. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have other questions, if you have disagreements with my analysis, or if there's any other companies you guys would like me to analyze. Thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.